on this subject. But I wanted to make a few sort of comments. One is that this remark is often made that India is a country of 1.2 billion people and we've got only 4 million taxpayers. And when people hear this statement, it seems that as if the non-compliance is to the extent of some extraordinary level. But when I speak to people from the economic field, they say that look, if you take an average size of a household to be about 5 people, you're down from 1.2 billion people to 200 million households. And you take one main householder who's an income generating guy, you're down to about 200 million people. And then 60% of India to 70% is still in the rural sector, agriculture sector, etc. They are under the constitution itself beyond our tax net. So you're talking about some 30% of the people who are really urban clusters that come in. So you're down to already some close to 60 million people, and you divide that by half because that's what the Planning Commission says is the poverty level. You don't expect people under the poverty line to be sort of paying taxes. So you're down by half, or you're down to 30 million people, and you got 30 million probably taxpayers as what you got. So really, I will be very interested in reading this book. So I'm very happy that this book has been brought out by ICRIER and Dr. Singh, because I want to understand what's this missing taxpayer, and that's a very important question because we seem to be alleging that there is a huge mass of people who are not paying taxes, but how large is that mass? So I'm happy that there's this piece of academic work on this. The second aspect is a little connected, where I think Mukesh and I were at a private talk by a senior politician, and he was a member of the Union Cabinet in the outgoing UPA government, and he made this very interesting remark, and he says, politicians respond to voters, and less than 3% of my voters are taxpayers. So really, will politicians and politics of the day respond to taxpayers? Because when you talked about all of these countries that we spoke about, where you have 80-90% of the people who are taxpayers, taxpayer grievances, taxpayer issues, taxpayer compliances, taxpayer rights becomes something that impacts 80-90% of the population. Here, it impacts 3%, maybe less. So really, I think when we talk about widening the tax base as a citizen of the country and a taxpayer, so I'm one of the subsets, I'll be very happy, because the bigger is the taxpayer community, the better is the political voice of that community, and the better is the responsiveness of the political system to the concerns there. We talked about technology, and this is sort of in one sense my last sort of comment in here. My son turned 18 about 2 months ago, and someone advised me and said, it's time he also had a PAN number. So I filled up the form, and we got the PAN number in 5 days. So I was extremely delighted that the responsiveness of the system had now come down to 5 days, because when I had applied, it was a long drawn process and so forth. Coincidentally, on Friday, I met with the official in the government of India who's been empowered to look at ease of doing business index. And the Prime Minister stated objective that we can't be 130 out of 150 in the ease of doing business. So I said, if PAN was a criteria, then we would be certainly doing better. So she says, actually PAN is one of the criterias, the number of days it takes to allocate PAN and the process by which you get PAN. I said, very good. So I've had this very good experience, 5 days. She says, with 5 days, we will be still 130th, because 20 countries issue PAN the same day. So when we talk about technology, we talk about responsiveness, the criteria globally are very different. Coincidentally, simultaneously while this was happening, I got a message from DHL that the courier packet had to be delivered at my home, and they say, you haven't got your KYC. I didn't know that now if you receive international couriers, you have to do a KYC. So I went to DHL site and I uploaded my driving license on the basis of my WhatsApp. So I took a photograph of this, I put it on my thing, and I uploaded it. I got my KYC in less than 5 minutes. So the question is that if PAN is a secondary verification form, it doesn't do any primary verification. It relies on a primary form. It's a secondary allocation. And if a KYC can be done in 5 minutes, if the global standards is 1 day, maybe I was wrongly patting myself that 5 days was a great job. So I think we are living in changing times. It's interesting times, and I'm happy that someone's taken all the effort to put this book together and all this publication together, because I'm sure it will be read and assimilated, and something will come out of this. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to make one or two larger points. A lot of the details have been discussed on this subject, and the view generally is that we, the department, as such, income tax department, has as such to move to customer focus. A lot of things are said that we need to have a customer focus, but what is forgotten is that income tax department is a legacy department. It was set up way back in 1865, and it still regards itself as partly an enforcement agency. So that issue of conflict between these two different demands on the department, that is taxpayer services and enforcement, that has not been, reconciled within the department. Now, what do I mean by this? If you look at the department as a whole, the taxpayer services part of it is largely being attended to by outsourced external agencies, whether it is allotment of PAN, payment of taxes, payment of refunds, processing of returns, filing of tedious returns, management of website. I mean, all these activities are being, the hardcore taxpayer service agencies are being handled through external service providers, controlled by service level agreements and various penalties and all that, and managed by a small number of vertical directorates, Directorate of Taxpayer Services, Directorate of Systems, so on. So therefore, we have a situation in which, in a year, last year 2015, the department gets Prime Minister's Award for quality, for excellence in quality of taxpayer services, which gives a citation that the department was able to, service some 4 crore tax returns, some 99% of the tedious returns, some 80% of tax payment, etc., etc. This is the citation of the Prime Minister's Award given to Income Tax Department. And in the same year, we have a report from Tax Administrative Reform Commission of Dr. Parthasarathi Shom, which makes some very, very scathing comments on the level of taxpayer services, on the level of behavior of income tax officers, with if you permit me, I would just like to quote 1 or 2 paragraphs from that TARC report. The words used: the taxpayers express helplessness against rude or arbitrary behavior of officers with little assigned accountability in practice. The continuing impact on the taxpayer who has been relegated to a position of helplessness is unprecedented internationally. Then somewhere else it says the confusing, if not arrogant, environment that they have to face on a daily basis was reported by high finance officials of major Indian corporations who are some of the largest taxpayers. Then they go on. So, how do I reconcile these two parts? One which says that the department has given excellent service to some 4 crore taxpayers, etc., and one this. I was invited to speak to a group of chief commissioners in their mid-career training in IIM Ahmedabad, and I put it to them. I put to them these two versions, that there is one Prime Minister's Award citing this thing, and there's another very credible report from a very, very professional and people who have already gone into this. How do I reconcile this? Point that emerges is this: the organizational culture issue of the department have not been addressed. Taxpayer services which are being cited in the Prime Minister's Award are those which are being largely provided by the external service providers, whereas what is being talked about here is the dealings of income tax officers and assistant commissioners and deputy commissioners in their scrutiny assessments and other dealings with the taxpayers. So when the TARC committee goes and speaks to chambers of commerce or tax practitioners or senior officers of large corporates, what the feedback they get is about the behavior of that part. Now that is an inherited culture which is coming out of that culture, that organizational culture of enforcement organization. Now this is what we have not yet attempted to correct. What we have done is that over a period of last, I suppose, 15 years or so, when we took taxpayer services as a critical component of our activities, we did move to first to taxpayer services, then to quality taxpayer services, then to customer focus, etc., etc. And we created organizations or infrastructure outside the department to address that. The culture within the department remains unchanged of that inherited legacy organization, which was set up way back in 1865 or so. So this is where I suppose the department needs to add. I mean, other matter details which have been listed in the two presentations are obviously, but then issue is that if the organizational culture does not support taxpayer service requirement of a developing economy or economy which needs ease of doing business or FDI investments, then something has to be done about it. And then again, who are the persons or officers who are dealing with this subject? Now, as far as taxpayer services, customer focus, etc. So this is very nice. I mean, this comes at the top level, the CBDT chief commissioners, principal chief commissioner, maybe even principal commissioners. But they are not dealing on day-to-day with the taxpayers. The people dealing with taxpayers are income tax officers, assistant commissioners, and most of them are not. I mean, for them, it's not even a word. It may be a term, but it is not. They have not imbibed it as a practical thing to be done in their day-to-day dealing. Then I look at tax act training. Training, I mean, elementary thing, the first thing that we were told in training, and which is continuing till today, is whenever in doubt, err on the side of the revenue. And that goes on. I mean, that also comes out from the same market, same mental space. So what is required is, perhaps, I mean, I don't see many departmental officers here, but because they are being the only one. So what we need is that we need to now move over to address the issues of organizational culture. That culture has to be changed from enforcement culture to and then again, when I look at it, taxpayers or customer orientation or services require different kind of training and attitude and orientation and mindset, whereas enforcement functions require a completely. So what we need to have in this department is perhaps two completely different divisions. I mean, somebody is a division which deals with services and a different division which deals with enforcement, with people who have that kind of orientation approach to the department. And then I also look at training of our junior level of functionaries, ITOs, inspectors. There is virtually no training. I mean, there is no question of training on behavior. There is no training even on the technical part of it. So that's again an area which perhaps needs to be addressed. We have done the technical part of setting of infrastructures or facilities for taxpayer services, but the soft skill part of it, where the approach of people to deal with that has not been addressed, and I suppose that's an area which certainly requires attention now. We have come to that stage. So I mean that's the one point I thought I must put across. We have taken a lot of time from the audience, and we have not given time for observations and comments or questions from the audience. I will leave the audience open for questions, if any. Any questions, observations, or anything that you would like to say? Yeah, yes, no,
all our actions are guided by revenue considerations. Our appraisals in the tax department, I'm sorry, I'm no longer in the tax department. The appraisals of officers in the tax department, how do the senior look at that? They only go by the revenue considerations. And when all your actions are guided by revenue considerations, I think one can't expect the officer to be taxpayer friendly. Because in case he becomes taxpayer friendly, how would he raise the revenue? So unless our priorities, I think that priority has to change. And that perhaps will lead to a change in the organizational culture.
The point which was made in that Rajasthan Sangam, I think it was made by the Prime Minister himself, of tax officers trying to mentor taxpayers. I mean, that is very nice to hear those phrases. I don't know how in practice this will be done, but that's what you were saying.
Can I just respond to what has been said? Just as an information, this thing was felt by the department a year before, And there have the appraisal report for the AC, I2 AC DC level has now included certain parameters for quality of assessment and the responsiveness. So it has been inbuilt to some extent now, but it has to be further done.
Thank you, sir. It was very nice points being put by the panel. But I have one question to Vinod, batchmate and a very dear friend. You see, what he says that the taxpayer service has been brought down right up to the ITO level and this. Now here, the other, the point was made that there is no training. In my sense is, it's not only training, it's the attitude. And just having a structure may not bring the taxpayer service. It's also very important to start trusting your own officer. While we talk about the trust deficit between the taxpayer and the tax administration, but it's also very important to trust your own officer so that he gets empowered to deliver on the taxpayer service, which is very, very important thing. And which is many tax administrations have started moving on that. So one, that the training aspect, changing the attitude, etc., is very important. Now, I also want to comment on that even with the TARC report, which is 1400 to 1500 pages have been written, the government seems to have missed out the very essence of what the TARC report stands for. What it basically did in a very, very selective manner, pick up one recommendation, give a comment, pick up the another one, give another comment, and say that the TARC report has been implemented. I don't think that has been done. Unfortunately, I was the secretary of the TARC, and I would read it from not only from the ownership point of view, but also from a point of view that whether the basic ethos of the TARC report has been implemented. And sadly, that has not been done. Because if you see the TARC report, what it basically talks about is basically trying to infuse taxpayer service and attention to the taxpayer in every areas of the work, whether it be dispute, whether it is delivery on the compliance, whether it is widening of the tax base, whether it is predictive analysis, every damn detail has been broken into one single fulcrum, which is the taxpayer service. So if the government was very serious, and this is where I come to whether the creating a structure is enough. If the government had been serious, they would have done slightly different than what they have done it now. So what it seems to be a lip service at present in terms of implementation of the TARC report is not going to deliver on the basic modernization of the tax administration. Tax administrations are not as easy as tax policy. You can bring the laws, you can implement it in, and get the parliamentary approval, which is normally done without much of debate, unfortunately. But you are able to bring the tax laws. But when it comes to tax administration, it has to be a concerted effort with a proper thinking over a period of time. And when and at that point, the government as such has to back it. Not that the CBDT or the officers will be able to do it. The government has to say, yes, I want to bring the ease of doing business. This is the way I would want to do it. Thank you very much.
Point and then just a small point, not much. See, most of the better tax administrations have 30% of their staff on taxpayer services, and they are not switching from audit to taxpayer services. At one stage, we were under some impression. Somebody said that if you are going to have a technology, probably we have some more people spare. He said, no, we can't spare the people because they have to do the audit work. See, the point is, taxpayer service is not a priority for us. That's one, whether they like it or not. The second, there is an IM study. Somebody has done a study, I can give the reference. We do not, the department does not trust the taxpayer. The seniors do not trust their juniors, and the juniors do not trust their seniors. The problem is that why I'm saying seniors, department doesn't trust the seniors. The department also don't trust their own officer. CAG, vigilance, this thing, that thing. The point is, there is all-round distrust. So that's why everybody is playing safe. So in the process, somebody gets hurt.
So that's the culture of enforcement agency, you see. I mean, that's the inherited culture of adversarial relationship, which has not been corrected. And I mean, I entirely agree with this issue that taxpayer services and enforcement are completely different streams of function. They require different skill set, different orientation, different approach, different attitude, and they have to be complete. I mean, there has to be a Chinese wall between them. You train people for taxpayer services, let them handle taxpayer services all through. You train people for enforcement, you let them work on enforcement all through. So, I mean, that's something which has to be perhaps discussed and taken within the board and government.
Sir, I have two questions. One was the use of technology. Successive expert reports for the last almost 2 decades, starting from Dr. Kelkar, talked about a commitment that there would be adequate resources that the government will deploy for technology, because I think the root cause, well, I won't say the root cause, behavioral aspects, everybody made that point, is that we can do far better on taxpayer services if we have the requisite investment on technology. And my personal impression has been that the government is adequately underinvested on technology. I don't know if there is any grand plan that the new administration has. I was also surprised to hear that large Indian technology companies are giving technology solutions to tax administrations of other emerging economies, but we've kind of blocked ourselves in trusting only the national informatics, which is the technology service provider. So I wonder why large Indian technology companies are not working with us. My second question, which is completely independent of the first question on technology, is on large taxpayer unit. The large taxpayer unit was launched with a lot of fanfare, and I know that the then finance minister was also personally very committed to that. But I must tell you that it's been such a big disappointment. As a matter of fact, some of the large multinationals who are supposed to be ambassadors for India are withdrawing from the LTU because they just feel that the approach of the LTU is so provocative that they don't want to be in LTU. So I just was wondering if, and I'm sure the administration is mindful of what's happening, if you had any observations on, one, government's commitment to technology, and two, how the large payer tax units will be relaunched, because that was something that came up in the TARC deliberations, that we should just discontinue. In fact, we said that just discontinue the LTU. LTU is a disaster, and let the government take time and relaunch the LTU so that at least there is some face saving, because currently as it stands, the LTU is a complete failure in my view. Thank you.
On technology, I can respond. Mr. Singh can also. See, no, it's right that in the initial year there was some problem about investing in technology, and when I'm talking of 99, 2000, and those kind of years. But then Kelkar report onwards, there has been no limits on investment on technology. In fact, government has been very open-handed on this. And if I can share that, Empowered Committee set up under Dr. Kelkar himself. That was the whole idea. First the report of Dr. Kelkar Committee, and thereafter Empowered Committee chaired by him, so that there is no issue relating to finance. So, and I was part of that, so I can assure you that. Now, as far as private companies getting into, virtually all of these things are being done by IT companies. NSDL is doing the PAN allotment, Infosys is doing centralized processing, UTISL is doing, Infosys again manning the CPC TGS, and this new tender they have just floated for data warehouse and business intelligence. That is again they are inviting private players to come in. So that is again not an issue. what happened was, you see, we were one of the earliest people to break into that field, and that area was not known when we were struggling to find our way. So that's why it's just taken. I mean, we started way back in what, 95 or 95, 94, 95. Even the telecom infrastructure in the country was extremely poor, extremely poor. So we struggled over that, and I think from something like 2005 onwards, we have got over those limitations. LTU, I mean, when LTU was being set up, that time itself we had, at least some of us had very serious reservations. I'm not surprised to hear what you were saying, but I won't be able to respond. Maybe Mr. Sinha can.
I think what Mr. Mukesh has said is true to that extent that LTU, you don't have very many corporates coming to the LTU. Maybe the way it has been structured has something to do with it, because as far as I understand the work in LTU, I've never worked there, but whatever understanding I have, the silos are still there. Despite the fact that this is called a large taxpayer unit, the services of direct taxes and indirect taxes are once again given in silos, in separately. So in a way, you are only have one chat, but you are going to two different offices. I think this has also perhaps created, it has not encouraged people, because they find that in any case, I'm going to two offices for getting two types of services of direct and indirect taxes. It's only one place that I'm getting this. And further, actually we started a new L2 in Kolkata, I think 2 years back. Not many people have come there, whatever report we have. Therefore, we'll have to have a rethink on this.
75% of that 60% comes from 5,500 companies. So if we can get that right, I think from a long-term point of view, you will see a jump in the tax collection, because they are the major contributors to our tax collection.
I think what you are saying is also connecting to taxpayer segmentation, and then give services to those people who are paying the most, a better service. I think this is a point which has to. But unfortunately, until now, the way we have put our jurisdictions, it is that every assessing officer's little unit has to do everything, and it is not the kind of structure that we have in other tax authorities and other places where you have, say, assessment, enforcement, recovery, taxpayer services have separate verticals. TARC has given such a recommendation, but as Sanjay has said, we still have to go a long way.
Sorry.
The basic tipping point has not been the direct taxes, unfortunately. The basic tipping point has been the indirect taxes, and particularly when the indirect taxes, the CBEC brought the regulation that the units within the same taxpayer would also not be able to get the credit across. That became the tipping point, and that lost even at a lower level, whatever little interest that it had, it just waned. So the point is, the government, while one arm thinks of in one particular manner, the other arm thinks in a particular another manner. And this is why I said that while talking about the TRC also, that you have to think about the basic objective and ethos, so that the boulder can be pushed up the slope in a much better manner, rather than doing it in a very fragmented manner.
No, I actually just want to say one sentence. Basically, this large taxpayer unit, there is two sides of it. One is the business feels that separate is good enough, because they can carry on with the way they have been projecting their turnover, profit, etc. This is one argument. I'm not saying that it is substantiated by anything. The second side, silos are there. What just Binod said, it's a fact that there is a silos, and that's why we don't give a common service. Third, my personal view is that if you study the systems prevailing in Australia or Korea or UK, the large business hub, there is a cooperation between the taxpayer and the... See, in fact, in UK, the director is supposed to sign a MOU with the tax department, and they are responsible for their behaviors. And there is a very good understanding that they will disclose their tax plan, The tax department will respond to the tax plan saying that it is taxable or not taxable. The point is, and within a time frame, and it is a binding on both sides. So the point, we have to come to that understanding. There had to be trust, cooperation by everybody. So I'm not saying that, yes, there is a need for reappraisal. Let's do it. Try to move in that direction. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Income tax and these things. There was some report about 2-3 years back that there was going to be a single number and integration. Has anything happened on that?
Same. I mean, the PAN number is also being used by CBEC and by DGFT and
Sales tax also?
not sales tax, but service tax. Yes, service tax is already using. GST, when GST comes, it will become integrated.
But the tax bases are not integrated. The data from one doesn't flow to.
As of now, no.
I've got a small question regarding the forms. It was discussed, and some other small consultants or the professionals were to fill up ITR 4, and it is about 35-40 pages, and where all the columns are 00 nil karke bhara jata hai. So it becomes so complicated. They say it is a simplified form, but it is one of the most complicated of the 4 or 5 forms.
ITR 4 is not a simple form. ITR 4S, what is known as Sugam, that is a simplified form. ITR 4 is the regular non-corporate business assessees.
Yeah, now individuals are also coming in the same category. This is why, so having the people are having income from 7 to 5, 7 lakhs to.
No, small businesses can use 4S if I'm not wrong. 4S is Sugam.
No, it is ITR 4 for the consultants and professionals.
Okay, yes. So if you are covered by 44AB, then perhaps ITR 4 is to be used. Otherwise, 4S can be used. So, useful session. I must thank all my colleagues on the dais, and thank you, ICRIER, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now request you to join us for lunch outside at the Jacaranda Hall. And we'll reconvene at 2:30 for the next session on risk-based audit for improved tax compliance. Thank you.